thank you very much for. It's obvious that both of their project is dependent on the community participation, and so besides 정기용 교수님's remarkable analysis of, let's say, sometimes social stupidity that we have together in our relationship with as a citizens and occupier of this city and the high-rise apartment buildings particularly, and how we need to recognize fundamental questions and problems. I think that one kind of has to think about in both cases that let's start this way. We have these apartments, for example, outside here. And in a sense, let's assume that it is also a 동네, a community. Right? Here in Korea, older people might remember 동네 in one way, an older neighborhood, low-rise building, small street like 골목, and high density and much more informal and socially more interactive. But the younger generation have grown up in apartment, so they see that as their own 동네, and that the old 동네 of the old generations, they only see them in, let's say, in television or in the movies. Right? So maybe that, let's assume that apartment complex also is a 동네. Then the real question is that who lives there, how people live together, and how the social interactions, and how, whether they have a choice of where they want to live and what kind of environment they want to live, and whether they, I think that they're participating in the process. I think 정기용 교수님 indicated very clearly that Korea is not made by its own people, but is made by, let's say, the government and the corporations who build these cities. So I would like to first ask Howard that then if it is not the question of physical environment that makes 동네 or community, and then through your work, and what is that element that makes 동네 and community, and it doesn't matter what kind of environment that it is, and how do you see that the way that Mr. Jung has explained about the kind of a critique on the Korean history of, very short history of living and building and experiencing city, and how that community has developed almost unknowingly.
I think for the last few years, is of course the concept of Gaifeng, as the kind of Cantonese version of the name has existed for decades. But I think in the last few years, what usually is a kind of a community based on location. People who live in a building and people who live on the same street, they will form this kind of neighborhood. But in the last few years, I think crisis is something that makes the community. So the community is, this face-to-face interaction, I think, is kind of diminishing. Yeah, because I think, yeah, in many cases, you have a lot of gates. Like what we see in the Lidong Street or Wellington Street, you can see all kind of gates that guard different buildings. So this is something that is this sense of security nurtured by the government that may be one of the reasons that made the old definition of neighborhood disappear. But at the same time, in the last few years, the crisis has created a glue together the community. And usually this regeneration issue is one of them. And sometimes you can see, well, not necessarily moving to a very positive direction. For example, there are many cases in Hong Kong where the residents of middle-class housing estates, they rise against for example, the building of an AIDS patient hospital, an AIDS hospital nearby. That also gives rise to another kind of sense of community. So, and another observation is that there's always the community has always to be represented in order to appear. That's my my observation. For example, the residents or the Gaifeng in Leedon Street, previously they are seen as just a cluster of print shops. Nobody really see them as a community as such. But in this regeneration process, when I think the moment when the first yellow banner was hung on the street, a community is formed out of not only the shop owner but also the residents. So that's my observation in Hong Kong.
Okay. 네, 내가 신나고.
괜찮아. 저도 똑같은 질문에 답을 하고 싶습니다. 원래 이웃은 커뮤니티는 가까운 거리, 영어로 표현하자면 프록시미티, 가깝고 손을 뻗치면 접촉할 수 있는 그런 데서 어떤 공동 연대의식, 솔리다리티 메커닉 이런 것들이 생겨나야 동네가 성립이 되는데, 그 동네가 성립이 되는데 현재 도시에서 하는 아파트에서 하는 사람들에게 이웃은 옆집에서 하는 사람이 아니다. 그들이 가장 가깝게 바라보는 사람들은 박경 선생 얘기한 것처럼 TV 탤런트, 스포츠맨, 정치가 가장 이미지로 즉각적으로 떠오르는 사람들이 이웃이다. 그래서 지금 새로운 커뮤니티, 새로운 동네는 개별적으로 네트워킹 하는 인비서블한 네트워킹 커뮤니티가 아닌가. 그래서 그거는 옛날 의미로 동네라고 부를 수도 없는 그런 것 같습니다.
Okay. 고맙습니다. That you explained it much better. I think that also when 정기영 교수님 he explained something very simple. I think that's what's really very nice about the way you speak. And one of the things he says that, well, okay, Korean society has only experienced the city making and living for 50 years, while in the West, at least 500 years. Of course, this is all general, right? There's always exception, but And so we have a short kind of experience. So we may be still in, let's say, in progress of developing a better city, better urban living. Then he said that maybe more important thing is that he says, as an indication of that we may still not have made a complete transition of living the old way to the new way, or from the 시골 to 도시, or the rural to the city, that we sleep still on the floor and on the bed. Some sleep on the floor, some sleep on the bed, and we eat. Some eat on the low table, and then some eat from the chair.